Stereotypes abound when it comes to atheists. Many a believer grows up with an image of us as just cold, arrogant, prideful, rebellious people. Others are nursed on this image of us as brainwashed, possessed servants of the devil. One can never be sure how the believers are going to describe us next, but one can predict that it won't be flattering. Many a believer is trained to shower us with hackneyed, often pejorative, usually contradictory rhetoric on contact, and this image of us is instrumental to this habit. One popular notion of atheists is that we are just angry. This one, though, can be well-founded, except for the just part. Many people get angry under many different sets of circumstances, but no one is ever just angry. When someone of any sort gets angry, there are reasons. If you catch us at the right stage in deconversion, we often are quite angry. But considering who believers usually turn to for guidance, criticisms of this can only be made hypocritically. One common moment of realization for the proto-atheist, or perhaps one could say the larval atheist, comes one day when he or she is sitting in worship services of some sort, maybe in a church, maybe in a synagogue, maybe in a mosque or temple, and gives just a dash of thought to the material in the sermon, and it crosses one's mind that part of it doesn't make sense. Sometimes one goes as far as to think something along the lines of God the Son praying to God the Father, the Godhead talking to itself. This is complete nonsense. Over time, one begins to notice other things about it that don't seem to make sense, but one figures that God just works in mysterious ways and it will make sense when God wants it to. But then, as more time passes and one begins to notice more and more things that simply don't make sense, one is compelled to wonder what God is waiting for. Sometimes this compels one to set off on a search for answers, thinking that maybe that's what God wants. You don't know for certain, but maybe. Sometimes the truth must be sought, after all. Seek and ye shall find, as the rhetoric goes. But the more we search, the less things add up, and this correlation counts among them. After all, any other subject under investigation makes gradually more sense. Why in the world should it be different for this one? Sometimes we turn to the clergy to aid in our search, when they can be bothered. But their answers don't really help it make sense either. Indeed, all too often their answers are intended to discourage us from searching. So this early period of discovery can be lonesome. One begins to wonder if, somehow, this all makes perfect sense to everyone else, and God is just singling you out for some reason. But as one investigates it more and more, God himself seems less and less impressive. As this continues, little by little, one's religious belief slowly dies the death of 1,000 cuts, until one day one realizes that one no longer has it. That's when the loneliness reaches its worst. One who has spent one's entire life schooled on the importance of one's faith, and the terrible things that happen to people who lose it, what despicable people they become, knows exactly how all of one's peers will react if one tells them the truth, and so one commences to live the lie. This period of loneliness continues until one encounters a group of atheists, or perhaps deists, and gives their spiel some examination. Suddenly one realizes that others have noticed these discrepancies as well. One wants to learn more. As one investigates this group, one experiences two things one doesn't recognize at first: vindication and a reduction of solitude. As one investigates more and more, realization sets in that the loneliness one has been experiencing is due only to one's setting. At this realization, one's spirits soar, but on its heels there comes another. All this time that one has spent feeling lonely and miserable, living the lie, happened only because one spent one's life being lied to. One has essentially lived for a prolonged period, sometimes years, in a prison made of lies. A prison that has stolen years from one's life. Years spent in a completely unnecessary state of misery. Years that will never be recovered. That realization can be downright infuriating. Now consider, I have subscribers who have made this discovery, but don't have the option to admit their atheism to their peers. They're still living at home, having not yet achieved a state in which they can afford to move out. For one reason or another, their sustained survival depends on living the lie, concealing their true identities from authority figures who absolutely hate what they secretly are. Their choice is between living the lie and living on the street. Just how angry are they allowed to be about that? How angry am I allowed to be on their behalf? I ask you, how much right has anyone to dare to hold that against us?